Next up, we have Chris Wilkes, who's going to talk to us about what the working group related to the business challenges has come up with, or the business working group. All yours, Chris.
Thank you. So on the business working group, Joe's on the group with me, Matt Ledzinski and Wolfgang, I'm going to get that wrong again. Getz. Is he here? Wolfgang, you here? Yes. Sorry about that. So we're going to talk about the business working group. The business working group, we're looking at several key factors. The value proposition for engineering simulation. So when we're talking about engineering simulation and trying to understand and present that value to senior management, how do we get the people who can write the checks to realize the value of the simulation, right? And we see this in our industry all the time for a significant barrier. And I'll dive off to a quick aside because I think we're slightly ahead on time. I happened to be in Asia fairly recently. I'm going to leave that as a very broad area. Happened to be meeting with a customer who does not have significant simulation occurring for their product set. They have a group that designs, it goes over to manufacturing does everything they can to manufacture, and there's really not a lot of discussion in between. They've been faced with some returns. In fact, they've been faced with some government-ordered recalls. Some of you might be surprised because this particular company makes baby safety products, and there's not significant work that they're doing for simulation and for our products for tolerance analysis. So a lot of it was done by hand calculations and things that they've done all along, and so obviously it's a huge opportunity. When I met with the person who was head of engineering, he'd just taken over, he says, we've never successfully been able to demonstrate to senior management the value until we started having these returns and can prove that there is an end cost to not doing it right and going through simulation the first time. So what we have to do as an industry, and what Assess for this particular group is working on, is communicating that value proposition and communicating it with the non-technical executives, which is possibly why they put me in charge of helping with this group. There's also an issue when you think about the business value, is the role of the untapped subject matter experts. And what I'm talking about here is throughout companies, there are subject matter experts that may be just sitting in their particular area. Software tools are generally written or sold in a manner where it's a single, maybe a floating license, but it's one user at a time for that particular license. And so you have this expert. How do we get the skills and how to use that software, how to use that tool out to the rest of the group where it actually needs to be used, right? How do we get that into the manufacturer? How do they get that into the quality? How do we get that information out there? So the role of the untapped subject matter expert is something we have to address in order to democratize the software, the skills. We have to address the small and medium business who can't necessarily afford to buy a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 piece of software and may only need it for this market for this month, but they really need that in order to solve a very critical problem. So how do we get the right tools in the right hands in order to get the solution to the customer? The business impact of the web, I guess we should have a comma there, the cloud, mobile computing, and a lot of this does get back to licensing models, and we had a good discussion about cloud. I think subscription-based is probably in that discussion as well, not necessarily just cloud-based, but the perpetual license and maintenance, but how do we get this? So this is what the key factors are for our working group. Looking at the value of engineering simulation, it's very hard to attract wide attention because you just don't get the recognition and the reward. It's like selling an insurance policy. Where's the reward for not having your product fail? Right? I mean, that's what we're doing. Congratulations, we have gone through all the thermal. This product, I tell you what, we thought that overhead bin space would only hold 100 pounds. I can tell you it holds more, right? Congratulations, you have designed a product that can do far more. Nobody says that. Let it fall. and we get attention. And so we have an issue for the value proposition for engineering simulation of it gets highlighted a lot in failure, but isn't highlighted enough for success, and therefore to invest in that particular area. It's difficult to correlate these complex technologies to the business benefits other than, well, you get to avoid these things. So again, this is what our group is working on. The exposure of CAE simulation value throughout the media. Again, we highlight things when they go wrong, but we don't highlight, congratulations, nobody had a failure today. Just doesn't really make the news. And key to executive communication. Okay? Communication with the non-technical executives, we've got to get their attention. And you know, as a part of this group, and then frankly, it's a fairly difficult task to get. I hear some of the CEOs are really short-term attention span. We need to get the executive attention and sponsorship for the funding of the engineering simulation. So communication, focus on the business metrics, and we talked earlier about ROI. And it is ROI, but it's also the return, it's also an investment that you may never see a return because you avoided a problem. Right? And so how we understand the value of not being in the newspaper. So we have both the role of the subject matter experts. This is a huge, big debate. We had the role of SMEs on here, and we finally figured out that it was both small and medium enterprises, which is SMB now, and subject matter experts, which is staying as SME. And so our group is looking at both how we can get the subject matter experts out there, which oftentimes are individuals, and many of you in the room are small businesses and subject matter experts. So how do we get that skill with the tools to deliver the value and to be realized at the senior management in order to get the solution? We're going to look at the impact of the cloud on the web, agile, scalable, CAE, and we had a nice discussion earlier, so I'm not going to go a lot into this, but what's changing with how we deliver the models. And here again, we've talked about permanent licensing, we've talked about cloud-based, but there is something in the middle which is subscription-based, right? And I just released a product yesterday that is subscription-based, and Autodesk is doing that, and PTC is doing that, and that's a different modeling, but it's not necessarily getting the job done for, I just lost that screen. It's not necessarily getting the job done for getting the tool into everybody's hands like you could with a cloud-based system where you can use it from multiple places. And then the need to educate, increase accessibility of software, which is talked about, and then the education of the IT. And so that's when we start getting into the security concerns. We need the tool into people's hands, but we're actually talking about data that is for products that have not been released yet. And that is the company jewels. So getting that information to the cloud is obviously something a lot of IT departments are going to have a difficult time with, and it was the number one, I think it was like the number 1, 3, 4, and 5 concerns on the survey that was presented. So, licensing models. Currently, licensing models are based, and I'm going to be clear on here. Current licensing models are based on usage by expert analysis. I want to highlight a difference here. We talked earlier in one of the presentations about usage-based licensing. That's not what this is. This is a expert gets the license, right? Which is completely different than a usage-based license, which means anybody who's using that, and it could be that expert, is paying for the amount of time or the amount of value they get. Very few companies offer that. But we need to take a look at licensing models and see how do we get the technology into the hands of the people that need it. High performance and cloud needs a different model as well. So we are coordinating, and the NAFEMS 2020 was already discussed earlier, and we're continuing with the coordination efforts. Next steps for us is a research paper. We're going to understand understanding and explaining the engineering simulation value proposition. So actually what we're doing here, we're putting together some surveys. So we're assembling a survey right now, and several people are helping this, and Joe's one of the ones that's helping with it. What we're going to be surveying is trying to understand inside of a company for the different levels of management, from the user all the way up to the senior management that we can get. We want to understand what the issues are what are the barriers to getting simulation software used and deployed more within that company? If a lot of people believe that there is a value to doing so, then what is the barriers to that? Is it literally just a financial decision, right? Are we not communicating properly what the value is? Is it like selling an insurance policy where you're trying to avoid some disaster in the future? So how do you put the value on that? But we want to do some surveying, and so we're going to do that over the next couple of months, and then that will be presented at the Assess Congress. I was thinking about the Snowmageddon on the Potomac in November. Okay. And with that, Joe, I think I turn it back over to you.